Hey guys, Iron Wolf here, back with another video. This time I'll be doing something a little bit different. As you may have already seen, I finished my build order series covering the standard build orders that you'll want to do with most of the factions in the game. And keep in mind this is 0.3. There will be more factions in future versions of the game, so I will have to, go back and address those factions and changes made to these factions. So don't worry, if you like the build order series, there's more to come as far as that goes, but please be patient with that. So now I'm starting another series that I hope you guys will enjoy. It'll be called Strategy Analysis. So we already covered our build orders, our standard build orders. These are the stepping stones in which, we'll want to develop basic strategies and build off of. I'll be talking about a little more niche and specific strategies with this series. So what I mean by that is the strategy I'll be talking about today. I mentioned in my Kokiri video. You may or may not have remember. The strategy is called Tier 3 Deers and Mages. It's a very mid-game heavy or mid to late game heavy build order. It'll be good for as the Kokiri. The times you would want to use it would be against a faction like, let's say, the Hylians maybe, or maybe the Gorons, or the Zora maybe even. Um, and the reason for that being, this faction will, or I'm sorry, not this faction, this build will help you with this faction to deal with matchups where you'll struggle to handle them in the early game, basically. So I guess it could be really good against the Goma as well, since if you can get past the early game against them, it's very difficult for them to come back. So this is a less aggressive, more passive mid-game to late game oriented build with the Kokiri. If you're planning on playing a longer game, or you don't think you're playing an opponent that you don't think you'll be able to rush down as easily, this may be, a good strategy that you might want to use. So this strategy is using Saria like the previous build. Like I said, she's best hero. Gives speed boost to range units and gives you access to Deku trees. Very, very good hero. Um, this build, I wouldn't say it's slower, but the timing is a little bit different than what you may be used to with the Kokiri. But without further ado, let's get into it. With this build, you're going to be trying to get to tier 3 as fast as possible, so you can start pumping out enchantresses as soon as possible. Alright, let's start cover the opening here. So just like in our previous Kokiri build order, our opening is very much the same. Our Minutemen are going onto the wood, Scout is going to scout. These Kokiri are gathering the resources right here. First one off, building a market grove. The first probably 2 to 3 minutes is with this build is the same as with the other one. So just keep that in mind. Our group of 5 workers coming out onto the wood here. I've got these bushes queued up thanks to this worker right here. And as these workers come out, they're going to go onto the bushes. And so this is something I like to do too with this build in particular. While I'm producing these individual workers to go onto the food, I like to get upgrades for the community homes and the public swings while I'm doing that. Because if you're training a group of them and you get one of these upgrades, it'll cancel the group. So if you're building them individually, it's a lot easier to squeeze those upgrades in there. So as soon as the first market grove goes up, you're upgrading it into a community home. And as soon as you get close to or around 200 materials, you're going to be taking two workers off of the food here, or I'm sorry, the wood, and that's going to be your building team. They're going to go over here, build another market grove, and then they'll build a second one. Keep in mind you're still producing workers individually till you have 10 over here. Well, 10 or 11 minus 2, so that's 9. So you need one more, but you need to have 10 workers on the food. As soon as you get this community home up, you're going to want to upgrade it into a storehouse. And as soon as you get the storehouse up, you're going to want to upgrade to the wood cutting upgrade that makes you gather wood faster. And you're going to need that because materials are very important with this build. So we got 10 workers on the food here. That market grove goes up. We're upgrading it to a community home. So let me just review for any of you that may not understand what's going on here. If you do, thank you for watching my previous Kokiri video because I explained that a lot, or I explained this in that video. So our Minutemen going on to the wood food here, or I'm sorry, the wood. I can't talk today. Minutemen on the wood, workers on the food, producing 5 workers going on to the wood. First worker that drops off the food, building a market grove here. Building 6 workers onto the food here. And then having our building team from the wood build 2 more market groves. Alright, I hope that all made sense to you. So now, at this point, as soon as you get 250 food, you're going to build a group of Kokiri workers, and they're going to be going onto the wood. As soon as this market grove goes up, you're going to want to upgrade it to the community homes, and your build team is going to want to go on the wood here. As you see, we've got this planned forestation, the wood chopping upgrade, coming in soon. Don't forget to constantly be micromanaging your bushes to make sure that you have enough. As soon as that group of 5 comes out, you're going to immediately queue another one if resources allow. And they're going to go onto the ore here. You're going to need a lot of ore with this build as well. Alright, our wood chopping upgrade is done. We're going to start getting wood a lot faster now. Alright, these workers going onto the ore. At this point, you're waiting till you get 350 materials so that you can build a battle grove. And then you're going to start saving for a tech after you get another group of Kokiri workers, and these workers are going onto the wood here. So let me just cover what happened. So after I got that opening build that I talked about last up, I want to get 5 workers onto the wood, 5 workers onto the ore, get a battle grove, and then 5 workers on the wood, or 5 more workers on the wood. And then we're going to be aiming to tech. These workers are going to want to go back on the wood here. I don't know why I keep wanting to call wood food. I guess it's just one of those days. But you're going to want to get this battle grove. You're going to turn it into an elk glade. Still saving for this tech. Just needs a few more materials. Alright, as soon as you get the elk glade, you're going to want to upgrade it to community homes. As you see here, we got to our 500 of those 2 resources, and now we're going to start teching up. You want to try and tech before, before 420, 430, if possible. That would really help because you need to tech as soon as possible with this faction. Or I'm sorry, with this build. You see there, we get our tech up close before 445. As soon as we tech up, we're going to get another group of 5 Kokiri workers, and these workers are going to be going onto the rupees, I believe. The reason you're going to want to get rupees this early is because you're going to be aiming to get to tier 3, so you're going to need that extra rupees. Also, you're going to be going for a lot of mages once you hit tier 3, so you're going to need a lot of rupee income. Okay, this is where things start to differ a little bit. So, up until this point, your build has been very similar to the previous one. Only major differences is you're teching a lot earlier and you're not building as many market groves. Those are really the only main differences. But all you need to keep in mind is 3 market groves, a battle grove, and then all these workers, and then you can tech. But once you tech, you're going to want to get a group of 5 workers. As you see here, they're going to go onto the rupees. As soon as resources allow after that, you're going to get another group, and they're going onto the ore. And now, this is what I was saying about how you need a lot of wood for this build, or just materials in general, because you're going to need to start building 4 towers. The reason you need these towers is, there's 2 reasons for this. One, you need the defense. This faction, or this build for this faction in particular, is very mid-range and late game heavy. So you're going to want to have some defenses in case you get rushed. Because unlike before, we're not going to be, rushing with Deku Trees and Slingers or Minutemen or whichever you prefer. We're going to be playing a lot more patient. So we're going to need some defenses. So we're going to need to get 4 towers. And not only do these towers provide us with defense, but they classify as town buildings. So the reason for that is once we get 4 towers, we can take up to tier 3. And once we get these resources as well. So we're going to need to get those towers for those 2 reasons. So we can tech and we can have defenses. Alright, another thing too, as soon as you hit tier 2, you're going to want to start producing Buck Riders. Buck Riders are a very good, fast, light cavalry unit. Very good unit. You're going to need a lot of those for this build. Don't build them in groups or queue up like a big chunk of them because you'll need the ore so that you can tech sooner. But I'll make sure you always have at least one in the queue. Because if you can slowly start pumping them out, by the time you hit tier 3 and you start getting your mages out, you'll already have a good bit of Buck Riders and you can start producing groups of them at that point. So, let's talk about what happened since we teched up. Our workers, our building team, is going to build 4 towers. We're building 5 workers onto the rupees and then 5 onto the ore. And we are still, at this point, slowly producing Buck Riders. Got a lot of workers on wood here, as you see. Got about 15. Always make sure you're micromanaging your bushes. Alright, that second group of workers going onto the ore here. Still producing Buck Riders. We've got 2 out already. It's a very good unit. So good. So good. Alright, now at this point, what you're going to want to do, if you're playing on the Gerudo Desert, you're especially going to want to do this. On other maps, maybe not so much. It all depends. But at this point, you're going to aim to have some of the workers from your wood come over here and build a market grove, preferably near your new wood line, so you can start gathering wood from a closer area. So as you see here, I take a significant force, not all of them, because I still need to get materials, but I take a good bit of the workers on the wood, have them come over here and build a market grove, and then after that, they're going to go onto this wood right here. Still producing Buck Riders. As you see here, we get this tower about to go up. Got another one in the queue. As soon as this market grove goes up, you're going to want to upgrade it to a community home. Alright, that first tower is done. These Mudmen towers are very, very good defenses. Alright, at this point you're going to want to queue up another group of 5 workers. These workers are going to be going onto the rupees here, because you're going to need a lot more rupees. Still producing Buck Riders. Always keep that in mind. Make sure you always have at least one in the queue. Our next group of workers coming out here. We have 10 workers on rupees. Second tower going up. Community home over here. You don't have to do this. I choose to because I want to tech up a little bit faster. But as you see here, I took about 3 workers off the wood to build my next tower. You can do that if you want to move things along faster. If you'd rather focus on getting your resources, that's totally fine as well. But make sure you have this 3rd tower up as soon as possible. Let's look at my building team over here building that one. And then these 3 workers building this one. Queuing up another group of 5 workers. These ones are going onto the ore, but the first thing they're going to do is actually build our last tower for us. So they're going to build this last tower and then go onto the ore, if that makes sense. You see here, 5 workers coming out, going onto the tower. Still producing Buck Riders. At this point, as soon as we get these last towers up, we're going to be aiming to tech up as soon as possible. As you see here, we only need a few more resources. Also, okay, so at this point, after you've gotten your 4 towers built, or at least queued up, and have workers on them, you're going to want to have your building team build another battle grove. The reason for this being, you're going to have one battle grove producing enchantresses, and the other battle grove producing deer. Getting really close to our tier 3. The 4 towers are all up, so now we can tech as soon as we have the resources. Alright, this battle grove is going to be upgraded into a fairy seclude, so that you can get those enchantresses. Alright, as you see here, as soon as we have the resources, we get this tech up to tier 3. You're gonna want to do this before 9 minutes. I got it pretty early actually, but you can maybe even squeeze this down to starting it around 8 minutes 30 seconds if you're really on top of things. So let's talk about what's been happening since our last review. So we've got these 4 towers up. We've got our new wood line set up over here. We've got a second battle grove, which we have turned into a fairy seclude. We've got 10 on the rupees, 15 on the ore, still 10 on food, and still producing bushes, as well as about 15 over here on the wood. Still producing buck riders, as we have the resources. Tech going up. At this point, you're going to want to build another market grove, because you're going to start needing the extra population as you start to produce both buck riders and mages, or enchantresses, I'm sorry. I would suggest you build 3 here. As you see, I queued up those 2 after I got this one done. Tech goes off. Alright, now we've hit tier 3 before 10 minutes. This is very good. We immediately start queuing up enchantresses. Still getting buck riders. At this point, you are going to want to, for the most part, just chill and just produce buck riders and enchantresses. Later, you're going to be going for Deku trees, though, as well as your hero. See buck riders coming out. At this point, let me pause. At this point, now that we've teched up and we don't need to conserve ore anymore, we can start to build groups of buck riders. This will be very handy for us, as we can just have a massive swarm of buck riders. Our first enchantress comes out here. Very, very strong unit. One of the best mage units in the game, in my opinion. Still producing more, so you're going to need those extra rupees. Once you have about 5 or 6 enchantresses, though, then that's when you're going to want to mix Deku trees into your training. Still producing bushes over here. Keep that in mind. Let me speed things up a little bit. So you see here, we've got a decent amount of buck riders and enchantresses. These plus our towers should be able to protect us from any rushes or harasses, because as you see here, we're getting close to 12 minutes. A lot of factions like Kokiri or Gerudo or the Goma are going to want to be harassing us at this point. So you see here I built a tower. At this point, you don't really need to build anything in particular outside of troops. As far as buildings go, you're pretty much done. So I am just putting up towers, and when I need, when I feel like I could use some more defenses and also more market groves to give me that extra population. So producing enchantresses, still producing buck riders. As you see here, that group of 5 Buck Riders came out, immediately queuing up another one. You will have the resources for this, trust me. And now that we've got 5 Enchantresses, so during this point, while you're getting those Enchantresses and those Buck Riders, you're going to want to set some rupees aside to start training your hero. As you see here, I have my hero out. You're going to want to do this between 11 to 13 minutes. Because you're going to need that hero to, in particular, to help you boost the speed of your Enchantresses. But now that I've got 5 here, 5 Enchantresses, I'm adding a Deku Tree into my army. You're going to want to be building, a couple Enchantresses and then a Deku Tree and then a couple more Enchantresses and then another Deku Tree, just to have you're going to want to have like a decent balance, but you're going to want the balance to be slightly in the favor of the Enchantresses, as far as like how many you have in your army. And of course, you're still producing groups of Buck Riders at this point. Let me speed things up for you. And unlike in my build order videos, where I mostly cover about the first, 10 to 13 minutes, I'll actually be covering pretty much the whole game here, just to show you guys like how you should be playing this this build, like after your initial phases and whatnot. Let's slow things down a bit. All right. So as you see here, I'm producing 2 Enchantresses and then a Deku Tree, just to have a relative balance in, swayed in the Enchantress's favor. Still producing groups of Buck Riders. As you see here, I build a fortress safehold. You can do this if you aren't really building anything and you have a bunch of resources. I would recommend you get one of these because you might need the siege units later, or if you're trying to throw maybe some Minutemen or whatnot into your army, you may want to have that Kokiri chieftain to help out your infantry a bit. As you see here, we've got a pretty good army of Buck Riders, a Deku Tree, our hero, and a bunch of Enchantresses. You're going to want to continue to build these units throughout the rest of the game, but this is a very good good army right here. And you're still microing. Here, I slowed it down so you can check this out. Still micromanaging your bushes. 15 on ore, 10 on rupees. Building team, building whatever you feel like you need, and then 15 workers on the wood here. Got a lot of defenses around, so if anybody tries to attack our base, we should be in a good place, especially with this army. Speed things up again. Let's double time. See here we get another Deku Tree out. You're not going to want too many like you do with the Dekus and Slingers build, but you're still gonna need some. You pretty much always need this unit in your army if you want to do well as this faction. At this point, you can start, close to 15, 16 minutes, maybe a little bit earlier, depending on how fast you are. As you see here, I got that. Let me slow this down. All right, there we go. We got this fortress right here. I'm getting a bolter shot. You can do this, you don't have to. But if you're going to attack, like I was about to say, between 15 to 16 minutes, you might want to start harassing your opponent. I got one just because I want to go, start attacking my opponent at this point. So I've got a pretty decently sized army here. So soon we are going to go and attack our opponent here, this pesky computer player. At this point, you see I have the resources to build a group of Enchantresses. I would recommend you do that once you have at least a couple Deku Trees in your army, so that they can help, tank and whatnot. Still producing groups of Buck Riders. Our economy is doing just fine at this point. We're going to want to go and attack. And I will show you guys how you want to be, managing this army during a battle. You see here, I put the Enchantresses as well as my hero in the Deku Trees. So for my Slingers build, I would not recommend this, but for this one I probably would, because you're going to have all these buck riders to cover your retreat if you need to. But with the other one, since the Deku trees are going to be, the main focus of the battle. Here, let me pause it. Since the Deku trees are going to be the main focus of the battle for that strategy, you don't want to put your hero especially in the Deku trees, because then if things are looking, like they're going south, you're going to want to get her out of there, because losing a hero is a huge economic setback. It may not seem like much, but it is a very big deal actually. So you want to have her in a safe place where she can escape. But here, you don't have to worry about that as much, because you have these buck riders to help cover your retreat if need be. So you see here, a bunch of buck riders just running in. What you may want to do with the buck riders, which I think I do in a moment here, you can hear those mages. They're very loud. Still producing soldiers for our army over here, though, as you see. Buck riders and enchantresses. These buck riders are so fast, it's crazy. What you want to do a lot of the time, let me pause this, their voices are getting very annoying. But what you're going to want to do a lot of the time is have, your buck riders run in here, kill a bunch of your enemy's workers, just, halt their economy, or just, put a nuisance on their income. And you're going to want to have your Deku trees, running around tanking and whatnot, with your enchantresses doing most of the damage to their troops and whatnot, because those are very good, very high damaging units. So that's pretty much how you want to fight with this build in particular. So you have your enchantresses and the Deku trees running around, destroying their buildings, capturing their buildings, just fighting their army and whatnot. While you have your buck riders, running around, doing a hit and run type thing on their workers, and then whatever stragglers they may have, their troops and their army and whatnot. But mostly you're gonna be running around and cutting off a lot of these workers. As you see here, picking off these workers. Got our boulder shot in here. Start taking out this town center. And that's pretty much it for the build. This is a very good strategy. It's not as good as the Deku trees and slingers and whatnot. It's very situational, but it's still something good to learn and have in your repertoire of strategies and ideas and whatnot. So I would highly recommend you give this build a try and see how it works in some matchups. You might find something new that would help you a lot in your battles and whatnot. So I really hope you guys enjoyed. I will have a text-based version of this strategy as well as a link to this replay. This is kind of like my build order series, I guess, but it's more of me talking about niche, matchup specific, or just more, gimmicky, or not even gimmicky, I guess, more of just specific strategies, like I was saying, niche. Just, to try out in certain matchups, the standard build is good, but sometimes it can only go so far against certain matchups. It might fare better against one faction and not as well against another. But, I mean, generally speaking, most of the standard builds do good against most matchups, but there are other strategies that do better than that in some cases. So I would recommend that you guys, try this out. I will leave a link to my Discord, as well as other strategy analysis videos that I'll be doing in the future, in the description below. So I hope you guys really liked this video. Give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe if you liked it, and I will see you guys in the next video.